الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Jag är glad för att vara som med mina muslimska bröder och systrar i Oslo. I love your language, it's very nice. And I like your accent in English also. There's always a rhythm at the end of it. If I was Norwegian, I would say, my name is Kamal el Mekki. I like that, I enjoy it, very nice. Excellent. Fantastic. I love youth conferences. This is what I live for. I love coming to youth conferences. I love dealing with youth. And, I teach adults and youth. Now, don't say this to the adults. Let's keep this between us, yeah? I enjoy teaching youth more, and I enjoy teaching children more. You know why? Because they're more intelligent. I know you think it's the opposite, but it's not. They're more intelligent, and their questions are smart, and they're like a clean slate, yeah? There's no baggage from back home, there's no culture. Uncles always want to ask you about weird things, things that are folded in papers and you kiss it and put in your pocket. Youth don't know stuff like that. It's always fun to teach youth. I want to quote a wise man that was once addressing youth, and he said to them, you know what your biggest problem is? He said your biggest problem are the adults, grown-ups, because they tell you can't do things. They tell you and they teach you that you're not capable, that you're not able to do things, and you start to believe that. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because realistically you have fantastic potential, especially in the day and age that we live in today. You have the potential to change the country. You have the potential to change the world. You can do that, and there's nothing to stop you, except for those grown-ups. Yeah? Except for the grown-ups. I always give the example of how when the Battle of Badr and the army for Badr was assembled, after Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam advanced a little bit, then he stopped and he started to inspect the troops. And he started to take out all the young men that were in the army. So 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, he would take them all out of the army. So we always hear this narration, we read it, and okay, that's nice. But if you think carefully, why were 12-year-olds in the army? Why was a 13-year-old young man in the army? Because they felt they were capable. Which means society dealt with them in a way where they felt capable, that they could do things, that they were men, that they were young men. And that's why, by the way, in Islam, we don't have this thing as like kids and all these other terms. Like you are all young men and women. So you don't if you're in Islamic school, never call your students, hey kid, young man, young woman, always, because that's what they are. They're young men and they're young women, and they're very, very capable. But what makes them not capable is when adults tell them you can't do things, and you're not able to do things, and it's dangerous for you, and you can't do it yet, and be careful all the time. So Usama ibn Zayd, when the Prophet ﷺ sent him at the head of an army, he was 17 or 18 years old. And there were supposed to be in this army, Abu Bakr and Umar in this army as soldiers, but later on they stayed back. But you see that a 17-year-old was put in charge of an army with grown-ups, with adults, because he was considered an adult. But today, what do? Everyone with me? Today, we keep telling you your children until you magically reach the age of 18 or 21 or whatever magical number. So in your mind, you become a child. So I want to talk to you a little bit about something called learned helplessness. So that's when you teach yourself or others teach you to become helpless, even though you have the ability. And the best example is with circus elephants, alright? So with circus elephants, if you see in the old days, the way they would contain the elephant is they would tie its leg with a rope, and they would beat this rope with a peg, like a big nail, into the ground. And the elephant stays put. He doesn't break free, he doesn't escape, he doesn't try to escape. Even though he's able to very easily. He could just continue walking and the rope would break. He's that strong as an adult. But why doesn't he try to escape? Because when the elephant was a baby, they tied it with the same rope and hit the same peg into the ground. And the elephant tried to escape and it couldn't escape. So when it grew up, it can tear down the whole circus tent with one leg, but it doesn't try to escape. You know why? Because it learned to become helpless. And so one of the psychologists, he dubbed this term, learned helplessness. When you learn to become helpless and you can't move forward. People can do that to you. You can do it to yourselves. I'll give you examples. I'm not good with names. What is that? It's learned helplessness. You're telling yourself, I am not good with names. I'm a failure when it comes to names. So you're never going to be good with names. You know what? A name is just one word. You speak languages that are composed of thousands of words. And you memorize thousands of words and phrases. You can't remember one name? You can. But you told yourself you can't. And that's why you won't. Same thing. I'm not good with roads. You tell yourself that. I'm not good with roads. So you become horrible at roads. Who says that in here? Who says I'm not good with roads? Nobody? Okay, just one sister. One honest sister in the room. Thank you very much. So, I'm not good with roads. So you become horrible with roads because you set yourself up for failure. You prepared yourself to fail. I used to say that all the time. I'm not good with roads. And one time I got lost in the street behind my house. I'm not making this up. I got lost in the street behind my house. And I had to call my roommate and said, listen, I'm lost in this street. It's called Wilson Boulevard. He started laughing. He said, you're behind the house. Come to the front, that's all. But I used to tell myself, I'm not good with roads. So I learned to become helpless like that. Another example, I'm not good with math. I'm not good with math. Who says that? Oh, now everybody's not good. Okay, excellent. So you tell yourself, I'm not good with math, you won't be good with math because you prepared yourself to be a failure when it comes to mathematics. And some people, even when they're able to do something, they still can't see that they're able. You know, when you go to a restaurant, you pay 15%, give 15% as a tip here? 10%? Okay, it's 10. 10 is good. 10 is easy, right? In America, we have to give 15%. That's whatever your bill is at the restaurant, 15% is the tip you give the person that was serving you. So people don't want to try to calculate the 15%. Or they immediately pull out their iPod, pad, phone, whatever, they just try to calculate it. But it's so easy to do it. But some people, even after you teach them how to do it, they still can't do it. Why? Because they taught themselves, I'm not good with math. They accepted that. So that's when you learn to become helpless. You know, this is a true story. This woman, she just graduated the university. She's going to become a teacher. So she went to her first school ever. And the principal gave her her first class. This was the worst class in the school. It was the biggest group of failures that were put in one classroom. And they didn't do their homework, they never listened in class, they never came to class. So every teacher didn't want to deal with that classroom. So they said she's a new teacher, she doesn't know that. They gave her the worst class. On the first day of school, the teacher gives her the names of the students, and next to each name is a 3-digit number. So she goes and starts to teach this class. In about a few months, 2-3 months, all these students are getting A's and B's, and they're doing their homework, and they're writing poetry and essays, and they're doing fantastic work. So the principal called the teacher into the classroom, into his office. He wants to find her secret. He said, I gave you the worst class. For years, they just barely passed, and no teacher wants to deal with them. How did you get them to become A students? She said, well, I just treated them based on their IQ levels. He said, how did you know the IQ levels? She said, the piece of paper you gave me at the beginning of the school year had the IQ levels next to the name of each student. She said, those weren't the IQ levels, they were the locker numbers. Every student gets a locker. Those were the locker numbers. But she thought she would see the person's name and 150, oh, he's a genius. And she would treat him like a genius. She didn't say you're a genius, she just treated him like he's smart. 135, she treated him like he's smart. 120, she treated her like she was smart. And they lived up to the expectations. You tell someone you're smart, you're brilliant, you can do it, they can do it. You tell them you can't do it. It's difficult, it's a problem. They'll fail. Inevitably, they'll fail. So don't allow anyone to tell you you can't do something. Don't allow people to take away from your motivation. You know, a wise man once told me, he said, if you have a great idea and a great project, just keep it to yourself. Just share it with a few people. Just keep it to yourself. Why? Because every time you tell someone, oh, it won't work. Oh, it's too difficult. And they just try to find some way to make it impossible. And what happens? It decreases from your morale, your motivation. So don't allow people to tell you you can't do something. Don't tell yourself that you can't do something. Always tell yourself you can do it. Always. You know, my younger brother, there's one thing I liked very much about him when we were growing up many years ago when we were young. And if he ever saw anything on television, he always felt that he could do it. A guy would like flip 500 times and go underwater and come out with a fish in his mouth or whatever. My brother would just look at me and say, that's easy, I can do it. You see someone jump out of an airplane and stuff and land and somersault, he'll look at me and say, that's easy, I can do that. And I love that about him. And I used to say the same thing, I'm not going to lie to you. would see something, yeah, I can do that. Why? Because the one in front of me is a human being. Okay? So if I'm watching some alien on TV doing something like, I can't do that. Okay? He's an alien, he's got a different body type, and everything's different. So he can do it, but I can't. But if a human being can do it, why can't you do it? They just put themselves through a certain regimen, and they trained, and they're able to do it. In the end, that's it. They drink water like you. They have to breathe like you do. They eat food like you do. So if they can do it, why can't you? Who is this person that's telling you you can't? Who's that person? So you can. If you make something seem easy, it becomes easy. If you make something seem difficult, it becomes difficult. If someone has a problem and you tell them this is a horrible, big problem, I don't know how we're going to solve it, it becomes big in their mind. If you make it a simple problem, a simple issue, it becomes simple in their mind and they find a way through it. I'll give you an example, and we all know this. When a child falls, let's say they had a hard fall, quite hard. What's the first thing they do? Before they cry, what do? That's true. Yes?
They rush ahead and see if someone's
They look up at the grown-ups, right? The child falls, the first thing he'll do, before he even realizes, the child doesn't say, am I hurt or not? First he looks at the grown-ups. And if the grown-ups are like this, they're like, ah! They start crying like crazy. And if they look at the grown-ups and the grown-ups just like this, and, come on, let's go, we're late. The child gets up and they walk away. So it doesn't become a big deal to them. But if I make that fall a big deal, it becomes a big deal. That's why I always tell my wife when the child falls, don't scream out. She can't help but do it. I mean, she's a woman, right? So she has to scream when the child falls. So even if it's a simple fall, she says, ah! The child's like, ah! But if he falls while I'm there, I don't care. Bam! That's why when a child falls, I'm mean to them. Child falls, okay, get up, come on, let's go. The child gets up and just starts to follow me. Arm broken, everything, doesn't cry. So, you make something a big deal, it becomes a big deal. Someone tells you can't, you won't. If you tell yourself you can't, you can't. But the truth is you can. The truth is you can. You know why you can? You know why you can change the world, you can change your city, you can change countries, you can change continents? Because what you have isn't something you invented. The words you speak, you repeat the words of Allah Azza wa Jal. You repeat the words of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And these are words that can move mountains. So if anyone asks you, can you move mountains? Say yes. But not with my words. I can move mountains with the word of Allah Azza wa Jal. The words of Allah will cause mountains to crumble. So I can move mountains with the words of Allah. I can give out wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ. I don't invent my own things. So because of that, don't ever see yourself as not worthy. Don't ever belittle yourself. Don't ever underestimate your abilities. And I hope at least in these next 2 days, you will come out with this type of motivation and with this attitude as well. Jazakumullah khair for your attentive listening. Assalamu alaikum wa sallallahu wa barak ala Muhammad wa ala alihi.